Hey guys, Jason here with RWB NetSec. Hope you guys had a great holiday and were actually able to spend some time with your family. I know we had quite a bit going on here, which is why there was a delay in me getting more videos pushed out, but now all the commotion is kind of settled down, so I'm going to get back into this. This particular video is going to actually start I guess the rest of the series for SQLMap. I've already done one video that just kind of showed the basic usage for SQLMap and how to extract data from a database. But like I said in that video, there are a lot of options that are available within SQLMap, and it was really too much to cover in one video. So I wanted to break it down into smaller segments to kind of make it a little bit easier to digest and you don't have everything thrown at you at one time. So this particular video is going to focus on the target options that are available. And if you pull up SQLMap and look at the advanced help file, you'll see all of the different sections. So we're going to take this video and just look at the target options, and then on the rest of the videos that will follow, we'll take each of the other sections like the enumeration, general, etc. So, with that being said, let's go ahead and get started here with SQLMap and the target options. Alright, so we'll start here. You see I just created this text file that lists all of the target options that are available. And we're just going to start here from the top and work our way down the list. We'll start here with this TAC-D. To make a direct connection to the database. So you would use this if you had maybe one specific database that you wanted to connect to. You've got the username and password for the database, and you can use this option then to directly connect to it and then extract your data from it from there. In these examples that are going to be that we're going to use in this video, I'm using the DVWA application that's contained within the Metasploitable 2 virtual machine, and I've already got that running. So I'm going to pull up a terminal window and we'll see what this command looks like. So the syntax will be, we'll do SQLMap TAC-D, you'll put a double quote, and then this first option here, you specify what the backend database is. So in this case, it's going to be running MySQL. You could also specify whether it was Microsoft SQL or Oracle or Postgres, whatever it is. Then you put a colon, 2 forward slashes, and then you specify the username and password to connect to that database. So for this one, we're going to be using the default username and password, which is root. And you put a colon to separate, and there's no password, so we won't enter anything here. Then you put an @ and then the IP address for the server hosting that database. So this is our Metasploitable machine. And then you put the port that the database is listening on, which by default is 3306 for MySQL. And then you put a slash, and then you would type in the database name that you're going against. So we're using DVWA, and then just put your double quote after that. And here I'm just going to tell it to grab the banner information for that database. So one thing to note with this particular example, since we're using the root user, this actually has access to all of the databases on Metasploitable. So we're going to get more information back than just the DVWA. But this would be the general syntax you would use with the -D switch. So we'll hit enter here. You can see it ran through, it connected to that database, and it pulled the banner information back for us. So we can see that it's running MySQL version 5.0.51. Alright, so the next option that we're going to look at is going to be this TAC-U, where we can specify the target URL. So with DVWA, when you log into it, it actually sets a session cookie, And we're going to need that information to be able to give it to SQLMap, so SQLMap can actually log in and make the connection and connect to the URL that we want. So first thing we need to do, if you'll pull up DVWA and log into it, and we'll use the default admin and password. And then I'm going to come down to DVWA security, set this to low. And then in order to get the cookie information, there are a couple of ways you can do it. I'm just going to pull it up from the browser here. If you go to Edit, Preferences, and then go to this Privacy section, and then you can just click on the cookie information here. And you can see there are two values that are set within the cookie. You've got this session ID and this security setting, and we're going to need both of these to feed into SQLMap. So if we just go over to SQLMap quick, or I'm sorry, the terminal window, the syntax is going to be SQLMap Taxi, and we're going to specify the URL that we want. And in order to get this, if we go back to DVWA, click on this SQL injection link. This is the page we're going to be testing against, so I'm just going to type in a value here and hit enter. And you can see that it's using a GET request, so the parameters are showing up in the URL. This is the URL we want to give to SQLMap. So I'm going to copy this and then just paste that in here for SQLMap. Now, since we're going to be using cookie information, we need to specify another option here, which is just going to be tac cookie equals, and then put your double quote, and then we're going to put in the information that we got from the browser. So this first value, this PHP SES ID, we need to enter that here. So put an equal sign, and then let's copy this value. And the cookie data is separated by a semicolon. So you put a semicolon here, put a space, and then we need to add in this other option. So it'll be security, and the value is set to low. So we'll do security equals low. Put your double quote to close it out. And I'm just going to have it to grab the banner information again from here. So just going back over this whole command again, where you specify SQLMap Taxi, because we're giving it a URL. This is the URL we got from the browser. We specify this tac cookie option, and then give it the information that's contained within the cookie that's set when you log into DVWA, and then specify any other options you would want to do after that. So let's just hit enter here. And you can see it was successful. It came back, and here's our banner information again. All right, so the next option that we will look at will be this TAC-L to parse targets from burp or web scarab proxy logs. So in order to do this, we're going to have to do a little bit of setup first. You'll need to open burp. So let's go ahead and fire that up here. And that's okay. So within burp, you need to tell it to actually create a log file for the HTTP requests and responses that are going back and forth. So once you get burp open, if you come up here to this options tab, and then go to this miscellaneous sub tab right here, and then look at this logging section. By default, none of these things should be checked. We're just going to look at the proxy requests and responses. So if you click to put a check mark on it, and then burp is going to ask you where to save the log file. Now I've created a folder on my desktop to save this file, and I'm just going to call it burplog.txt. And then just click save. And I'm going to go ahead and click this responses so that it's saving everything. And I'll just go back and click the proxy tab. Now you'll need to make sure that your browser is set up to use burp, and I'm using Foxy Proxy, and I have burp set up with it already. So I'm just going to tell it to use burp for interception, and I'm going to refresh this page so that burp captures the page. We'll come back over here, forward the request, and I'm just going to enter another value here just to create another request inside of burp. Forward this request. Alright, so if we go and look on our desktop then in the folder, you can see that it's created this burp log text file. If we open it up, you can see the information that it contains. It shows the requests and the responses that came back. So SQLMap is going to use this information it's going to extract the URL, and this file already contains the cookie data, so we shouldn't have to specify that separately. So let's take a look and see if that actually works without specifying cookies up. Let me go back to the terminal, clear this out. So the syntax will be SQLMap Taxi, and then we're going to point it to our log file that we just created. So this is going to be on root, desktop, burplog, burplog.txt. Let's see if this works without specifying. I'm not sure if it'll read that out of that log file or not, but we'll see. Yes. Yes, exploit it. And it was successful. You can see it came back and gave us the list of databases. So it was able to connect, and all we gave it was this log file that we saved out of burp. So it's a pretty simple usage here. It just gives you another option, another way to connect to that database. And of course you could specify other options here as well. You could continue enumeration, like getting the table names, columns, etc. So the next option we'll look at, this TACM, which lets you give SQLMap a text file that contains multiple target URLs. I'm not actually going to do a demo of this one. I think this one is pretty self-explanatory. So basically, instead of this, like with this TACU, you're giving it a single target URL to scan against. You can use this TACM to feed it a text file that would contain multiple target URLs. Just make sure that when you create your file, each of the URLs is on a separate line by itself. So then SQLMap would take this file and then read each URL and run its checks on each individual one. So that's basically how you would use this option. So the next option we'll look at is this TACR, which lets SQLMap load an HTTP request from a file. And this kind of works similar to the way this TACL would. And what you would do is, if you were using burp, for instance, to intercept a request, you could come in here and take, we'll use this URL for example. And you can see that burp captures the request. You would take this information and copy it. Let's just copy this data. Let's see what I want to do here. Let's create a new file. And then just paste that data, that HTTP request, into a file. Let's save this as dvwa request.txt. And I'll just save it in this same folder here. And if you go back, to your terminal, we'll specify a TACR here, and then again we're going to point it to that file. I already forgot what I named it. DBA request. And then again, you should not have to specify the cookie information since it's already contained within that request. And I'm just going to do a TAC DBS again. And then you can see that it was able to take that file. Again, it enumerated and gave us back the databases that were contained within Metasploitable. So that's just another way of feeding data into SQLMap as far as the requests go. So this next option, TAC will let you process Google Dorks and use those as your target URLs. So this is the same if, let me get the browser pulled back up here. Just open a new tab quick. If we go to Google, and if you've ever done any kind of Google dorking, let me disable burp here. Refresh this. Come on. So if you've ever done any kind of Google Dorks, you know you can come in here and use the NURL search parameter and then do something like index.php ID equals, and then let Google do a request, and it'll look for any URLs that contain index.php $ID equals. So you could manually sit here and do this and look at each of these URLs, or you can give that information to SQLMap and let it do it for you. One caveat with this one, I guess one caution that you need to be aware of, when you use this option, SQLMap is going to take I think it's the first 100 requests that Google returns for whatever the Google dork is that you enter. And it's going to ask you for each one of those if you want to scan that target. So unless you want to sit and interact with SQLMap on 100 different requests, you may not want to use this one. Especially since you don't have explicit permission to test the sites that come back. This is probably not something that you would want to do live out on the internet, just because you don't have permission to test those particular websites. But the syntax, I'll just go ahead and show that to you here. The syntax would be SQLMap TAC, and then you would feed it the Google dork that you wanted to use. So we'll do index.php ID equals, I'll just put 1 here. So this is what the command would look like. So I'll go ahead and hit that just to show you what's going to come back. So you can see SQLMap is going to hit Google, and it's going to start finding all these sites that contain that particular URL, and it's going to ask if you want to test each one of those. So I'm obviously not going to go through all of those, so I'm just going to go ahead and kill that session. But that's what it would look like, and that's how you would use Google Dorks within SQLMap. And then I believe the last option that we've got is this TAC, which will let you load options within SQLMap from a custom configuration file. Now you may want to use this option if say you have a certain number of sites that you're looking at and you want to use the same options for each of the targets. So instead of you having to type out a command, a long command maybe, that you're going to be using the same switches with, maybe like the TAC DBS or current user, whatever it may be, so that you don't have to type those in for each of the sites that you're looking at, you can create your own custom configuration file and have SQLMap load that and use it for each of your targets. So what you can do then, and I think I've got one created. Yeah, I just created this. This is just a very basic one. But this is what it would look like. You need to specify your section headers and then put in whatever the option is that you want to use. And you can get a sample from the SQLMap.config file. And I've got that. Let me close this out here, which is located under, you can see here, Etsy SQLMap. You can look at this file and see how it's set up and use it as a template for creating your own custom configuration file. And you can see these are all of the section headers, so you would need to include that in your file that you created. You can see here that I just used a couple of these options here, and I was playing around with it, so I need to change. It would help if I could remember what I named everything. burplog.txt. So let's change this to burplog. Do a file and save. So then if we come back, let me clear this out. We'll do SQLMap Taxi. And then I'm just going to point it. Let's see, burp. dvwa config.txt, which is going to be this file here. So SQLMap should be able to take that file, read in this, the data that's contained in that burp log, and then it should pull us back the current database user and current, the current database that's running and the current database user. So let's see quick if that works. Hit enter, and it looks like it was successful. So we've got the user that the database is running as, and then the name of the database here. And again, you could make these configuration files as complex as you want to. Just use that SQLMap.conf file as a template, and be sure again that you add these section headers. If you don't put these in, SQLMap is not going to be able to read it. It's not going to know what it's looking at, and you'll get an error message from that. So that's pretty much going to do it for this video. For the rest of the videos that I'm doing, I'm going to be continuing this same format for each of them. So we'll just take a section out of that help file and just go through the different options that are contained within that section. And hopefully we can work our way through all of them. But as always, guys, I really appreciate you watching the video. Again, if you have any questions or comments, just leave them below. And I hope you guys have an awesome day. Happy New Year, everyone. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If it's your first time here, I would love if you subscribe to the channel and share it out with all of your friends. So my hope is to build a community where we can help each other learn and grow in security, especially if you're just getting into it. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them below. And again, thanks for watching. I hope you all have an awesome day. See you guys.